Hello and welcome back. Bahar Alexander here. Thank you for joining me for another video blog. Today's conversation will be a continuance of a conversation we had earlier in February on the topic of confidence versus self-esteem and how these two are interrelated, but they are not the same, and yet both strongly related to high levels of performance, ability to create success and abundance in life, and do it in the most joyful way possible. Today's session will be solely focused on self-esteem. Next session, I will go deeper into confidence because they're both very important to understand deeply and be able to recognize the triggers so you can actually do something about them. So what I'd like to take you through today is, first of all, a recap of what self-esteem is. For more in-depth information, I urge you to watch the first video. Then I will take you through a 5-5-5 practice that I like to share with my clients as well. 5 triggers to recognize, which will show you whether you have low self-esteem or not. 5 tools to reprogram your self-esteem and strengthen it. And 5 concrete actions you can take on a daily basis that would incrementally compound your level of self-esteem and contribute to a much stronger confidence level as well. So to get started, what is self-esteem? As we talked about during the last session, self-esteem is the vision, the view we have of ourselves and our capabilities, which is programmed into us between the age of 3 and 6. Now, as you can imagine, there are no rational faculties assisting us in this process. So whatever we learn about ourselves and our capabilities to create personal safety, personal growth, and autonomy is based on the feedback system we get from our environment. Now, what is our environment between those ages? Parents, siblings, relatives, school, teachers, and our friends. That is our environment. So how they view us and the feedback they give to us about ourselves, who we are and how we show up in life and what our capabilities are, form the basis for our self-esteem. Having said that, it is very important to understand that although self-esteem is programmed into us at a very young age, and at a certain point it becomes this ongoing unmanned tape process that constantly regurgitates information, you can always amend it. What is required for this process? I will take you through in a moment. But first, I want to give you the first 5 triggers that you can recognize within yourself that will help you gauge how low your self-esteem is, whether you need help in that department. The first thing I want to say is, before we get started, having low self-esteem is not a swear word. It is not a tag of negativity. It is okay to recognize where we have areas of ourselves that we need to work on. And quite often people think if they're told that they have low self-esteem, they feel really hurt by it and they feel insulted by it. But I urge you to be more open-minded and understand that if you do have low self-esteem and it is recognized, that is a blessing. Now, if you can recognize it within yourself, that is a much greater blessing. Empowerment is created from that because you can now take action towards remedying this state. So, to continue, the 5 triggers to recognize low self-esteem with. Number 1 is the all or nothing attitude. It's that perfectionist mindset that says either or. Now, this is a really tricky phenomenon, and what it does is freezes you in the process of taking action towards anything. And that can be quite paralyzing and not conducive to a life of high performance. The second one is mental filtering. Now, this is really based on our sensory system, and these patterns are rehearsed. They're not based on reality. So something happens around us and we immediately give it meaning. We don't really go looking for facts about the situation, but we immediately assume that something is up. For example, you send an email to a colleague, they don't answer you, you think they're ignoring you. Just to give you a clear understanding of that. The third one is converting positive to negative. So these are people who cannot take compliments. If you say, oh, what a beautiful outfit, they'll say, oh, this old thing. Or you tell them, what a fantastic job you did, say, oh, it was just an easy assignment. So they have an inability to accept compliments and they reject their achievements. Now, this can be quite toxic to the process of creating confidence because, as we talked about during the last video, confidence is based on how the outside world sees us. That's the appraisal that we give ourselves, how we show up in the world. Now, if you're not seeing your achievements, which is the low self-esteem part, it becomes impossible to create satisfaction with your performance because it's just never good enough. So you keep trying harder and harder, and that can be devastating for your life, your personal relationships, and for your level of success. Sabotage happens in that fashion. The third one is jumping to conclusions. This, just like the second one, the mental filtering, it is really based on rehearsed emotions and thoughts. So you don't go looking for facts of the situation. You just jump into conclusions and react in an emotional way accompanied by a thought. Well, actually, I should say there's a thought that leads to an emotion. And then the emotion reaffirms the thought, and now you take action in however manner you take. So if somebody says to you, let's say a loved one says to you, I wish you had done that differently. You immediately see it as them saying, oh, you're awful. There's something wrong with you. You're broken and I'm going to leave you now. So this jumping to negative conclusions is a very devastating effect of low self-esteem and definitely needs to be re-amended. The last one is mistaking emotions with facts. So something happens, we feel something because of it. Something happens, triggers a thought triggers an emotion, and we take that emotion at face value instead of questioning it, finding facts about it. For example, somebody's preparing for an important event, an exam or a test or what have you, and they're feeling this energy inside of their body, and they call it being nervous. But what they're actually feeling is excitement. So in the next part of the conversation, in amending and strengthening self-esteem, we'll go deeper into that. But mistaking emotions for facts, that can really trigger a low self-esteem. And if you feel threatened by your situation because your emotions are engaged in that experience, that can be paralyzing in taking action forward and creating true success. So now, 5 ways to reprogram a low self-esteem. These are very simplified ways of addressing it, but they're extremely effective. Number 1 is knowing yourself. A lot of the times, people with low self-esteem have a tendency to always be pointing their fingers to the outside world. That person did that, so A triggered B, which triggered C. So something did something, made me think a certain way, and now I'm feeling this way. And it is extremely important to understand that it is not the situation that leads to the feeling that we have, but it is our appraisal of it. By understanding, by catching the emotions, by recognizing the thoughts that lead into those moments of disarray, and recognizing our own repeated patterns, we get to understand that we can change these elements of A, B, and C by doing a complete reappraisal. What this does is it provides us with the capability to understand ourselves and see that we can choose a better feeling thought and take more constructive and positive actions towards facing our challenges. Number 2 is self-compassion. People can be so incredibly hard on themselves. So these are the same people who cannot take a compliment. Self-compassion is extremely important in 2 ways. 1, you have to allow the compliment to come in because it is a reinforcement of your capabilities and your understanding of yourself, your self-appraisal. Number 2 is that when we don't have self-compassion, we also are absolutely unforgiving of our own small mistakes. We see every little trip as a failure. The British call this putting your foot in your mouth, what I'm about to tell you. But let's say you're having a conversation, all of a sudden you say something that you were not supposed to, and you keep beating yourself up for it the entire day, regurgitating that emotion and the thought, oh, I shouldn't have done that, I shouldn't have said that. That's not very compassionate. You have to learn to let go. You have to learn to let go so you can get out of the emotion. Be a little bit more self-compassionate and a little bit more self-forgiving. Allow the compliments to come in, and just be silent in that moment and say thank you instead of arguing with it. The next one is evaluating positive effects of experiences in life. Let's say you go through a challenge, you don't come out at the end of it with 100% success, but there are still lessons learned. If you get to reevaluate the positive effects of that experience, it adds to your self-esteem. It adds to your feeling of being capable to create personal safety for yourself. And which brings us to the next one, ability to compliment yourself. By being able to do evaluation of your experiences, you see that not everything you do is wrong. You are more than capable of making good decisions as well. The only thing is that you are focusing a lot more on how other people view your decisions rather than staying close to your own emotions and understanding that you should be making your decisions through your own intuitive system. Because low self-esteem also pushes individuals to be much more outward looking for self-appraisal, as we just talked about. So, very important to do that. Next one is accepting and recognizing your emotions, but then going through a relabeling process. So what does that mean? If you're feeling angry, actually state to yourself, I am feeling angry, and then question it. Question it. What is this based on? Is it truly anger? Am I feeling frustrated? And try to get yourself out of that extreme negative state. Gradually, understanding that by asking questions from your emotions and your thoughts, you get to reappraise what is actually happening in front of you. How much do you know about the situation? Are your emotions based on facts or the fictions repeated inside of you through your repeated patterns? It is very important that you follow these 5 processes because they really stimulate you to be more present when the triggers happened. And in the moment, apply them to correct your own patterns and gradually, incrementally bring yourself into a higher state of self-esteem and self-image, which is extremely important for your confidence levels. Now, the 5 concrete steps on a daily basis to ensure that you're incrementally compounding your growth and progress towards a higher level of esteem. Number 1 is identify the thoughts and the emotions. So that's again the step 1 of reprogramming. Know yourself, understanding what situations trigger you. Is there an individual that triggers you? Why does that happen? What does this incident, this conversation, these words, whatever it is, whatever the situation is, what does it trigger inside of you that makes you feel insecure, makes you feel like you are incapable of creating safety for yourself in that moment? So knowing yourself, recognizing your own tendencies, extremely important, and it helps you prepare for the daily situation. So if you know it is your boss that constantly triggers you, you get to create an understanding around what is it about his behavior that triggers me? Why do I feel offended by so-and-so conversation? Helps you prepare yourself for those sorts of situations. Number 2 is creating space. Now, this is also really helpful in continuance of the first step. Understanding your own triggers and then creating space. So when you know a certain individual ticks you off, triggers you, you know you're going to be facing that individual on a particular day. If something does happen that triggers that emotional state inside of you, create space for yourself. Don't respond. Take space by walking away saying, I will get back to you on that one. Take a little time to take a breath, walk around a little bit, reassess your emotions, and get yourself into a state of self-appraisal. What is this emotion triggering inside of you? Why is that happening? What is the truth about that situation? Are you absolutely sure that this individual is trying to offend you? So by creating space, walking away from the situation, you allow yourself some space between your trigger and your response. Just by doing that, you get to compliment yourself on your strength of emotional state and feel better about who you are and your own capabilities. Again, capabilities to create safety. The next one is, it's really important that you let go. You let go of the emotional triggers. Don't overly focus on them. Now, what happens when people are stressed out, which is very much related to the incidents I just talked to you about, the examples I just gave you, when somebody feels attacked, they feel stressed out. You zoom in on this problem and you don't see anything else anymore. It's really important to let go of that information so you get to broaden your view and see what is in fact happening in front of you. So ability to let go of the emotion so you get to zoom out of it and see the facts about the situation, extremely important. Number 3 is, when it doesn't feel good, it's time to let it go. So when a tendency, when a reaction pattern doesn't feel good, it's time to let it go. I'm going to give you an example on this so you can understand it better. Let's say you have a tendency to freeze when you feel like somebody's emotionally offended you. That doesn't feel good inside the body. What your self is telling you in that moment is, you got to correct this. And if you don't, the more quiet you are, the worse it feels inside of you. So don't be afraid of other people's opinion of your reactions. As long as you're being compassionate and empathetic and balanced, speaking up allows you to feel stronger inside and grow your sense of self-esteem, because in that moment you know you can create personal safety. Last but not least, actually got 2 more, sorry, it's not the last one. Personal self-care. Personal self-care is extremely important. What you eat, how you eat, exercise, your sleep excessively affects your sense of self-esteem. When you're taking care of yourself, you also have the ability to stay closer to yourself rather than relying on everything outside of you to define you. And then last but not least, practice positive self-talk. How often does something happen around us and we blame ourselves for it? Whether we are a participant in a situation or not, it has already happened. It is very important that you try to look at the half full of the glass. Apologize if you've made a mistake. Stand up for whatever consequences may be, or accept that you did everything you could and the situation is no longer in your hands. Control the controllables, and that is only your internal state. So the conversations you have with yourself about your capabilities to show up in the world, to make decisions, to communicate, these are extremely important. Learn to create a more positive self-appraisal and take the time to recognize your own accomplishments and reward them in the moment. Preferably not with food. That's another conversation. So that was your 5 triggers to recognize low self-esteem with, 5 steps to reprogramming your self-esteem, and 5 concrete steps you can take on a daily basis to strengthen your self-esteem and move yourself into a higher state of self-esteem and an incredibly strong confidence level. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please recommend it to your friends and family. We can all use a stronger, more robust sense of self-esteem. If you like the video, please give us a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel so I can keep providing you with these empowering videos for your growth and your development. In the meanwhile, change your mind, change your body, and shift your life. Your psychology will predict your physiology and the direction that your life takes. Have a lovely day, and until next time.